Hi guys, this is Phil. So my birthday month is over, but I still am receiving stuff in the mail that I had purchased in November. Two of which is actually two Watchmen action figure, Silk Spectra II and Ozymandias. I've already previously owned Nite Owl, so I'll talk about them a little later. But just to give you an idea, having action figures of the Watchmen is actually kind of weird because Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons have probably not given their consent to these figures, but it doesn't really matter because DC owns the right, and so they print them or they license these out. Now these are originally Matty Collector, so they were like a specialty item. They sold about $25 each, and obviously after Matty Collector died, these went to regular Mattel shops, or they were clearanced out to sold to toy stores all over the world. And you can find these usually about $30 or $40, but I got these on clearance, so I think I got them $15 each, which is really a good deal considering that these were at one time you can only get it from Matty Collector. All right, so so a little introduction. I am a huge Alan Moore fan. In fact, Alan Moore with the Watchmen helped really brought comics in kind of like a grim and gritty era. That and Frank Miller's like Batman's The Dark Knight Returns really helped solidify that time period, 1986, 1987. Like I said, I was a huge fan. I actually didn't really start reading The Watchmen until issue number 7 because I was collecting comics at the time. And I saw issue 7 on the newsstand and at 7-Eleven. And I picked it up, and it is... I've read that book cover to cover, including all the little weird like newspaper, like all these like newspaper prints and all that stuff. I thought it was really good. Of course, the books like issue 9 and 10 and 11, they were mostly delayed, but I started reading from issue 7. I went back and got back issues obviously, and then completed my set. I was missing issue number 11 for a long time. So ever since I saw this panel where Ozymandias action figures on the stand, and then of course Rorschach has been playing around with the figures and kind of bent it out of shape and left Ozymandias by himself. Ever since I saw this panel, I knew that there should be action figure, or at least I wanted action figures of Ozymandias. And so like I said, I'm very happy to get Ozymandias here. So anyway, to give you a little background, the Watchmen was originally a Charlton comics story. So they were going to use Dr. Manhattan, or Dr. Manhattan was actually originally Captain Atom. And I think Peacemaker was the comedian. Nite Owl was Blue Beetle. And so on. And so what happened is they brought the story to Dick Gorgiano, and he kind of rejected it because he felt that because character would die, and characters is just like really crazy stuff that they were doing, really dark stuff, that they didn't want to kind of tarnish the Blue Beetle character or any of that stuff. So what they had. So they suggested Alan Moore, to create new characters, and so the Watchmen was born, and it's pretty amazing because if DC hadn't been so protective of the Charlton purchase, we probably wouldn't have the Watchmen as we know it today. Even though in some strange universe, I kind of wish. We kind of had that story of Blue Beetle versus Captain Atom and all that sort. So it would be interesting in a different world. So the first time they tried to make action figures was in 2001. DC Comics was celebrating the quote-unquote 15th anniversary of the Watchmen, and at that time, and still to this day, Alan Moore absolutely wants nothing to do with DC. He had mentioned that in their contract for the Watchmen, that when they produced the story, that when DC stopped publishing Watchmen, that the rights would be reverted back to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. And so what Moore claimed was that DC always kept the book in circulation, always in print. He said, of course, you have to remember back in the 80s that DC Comics and Marvel Comics did not print trade paperback of. They never collected any of their stories. I remember because I was buying like comics in the 80s, and in order for you to go back and get certain stories, you had to dig in the back issues, because the collecting storylines were just unheard of. I mean, there were exceptions and stuff, and anyway, Watchmen apparently was one of those books that was always in print, and so every year they just kept it in print. And Alan Moore just got fed up, and because he wanted the rights back to Watchmen to do as he pleased, either republish it under his book, or republish, or maybe even get action figures done on his supervision or whatever. So anyway, so DC tried to produce these action figures in 2001, and of course Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons gave it a thumbs down. So what happened is the movie happened. Okay, so we're talking the 2009 movie that came out, and this is like a Black Freighter. So the 2009 movie came out, and it was a big hit. I mean, a lot of people loved it. I felt it was all right. I mean, it's Zack Snyder. I kind of wish that they kept the ending the same, because they changed the ending. While some people loved the ending, I was not one of them, because I was a comic book fan first and foremost, and to kind of end it in a non-octopus ending, it was kind of like what? Anyway, so in case you're wondering, this is just a steelbook of the director's cut. This is also the director's cut, but this is a Best Buy exclusive that has Dr. Manhattan's head and some extra bits and stuff. And then this is the Black Freighter, which is actually the whole cartoon was made into its own feature. If you know anything about the Watchmen, if you read the Watchmen, you know that the Black Freighter is actually a storyline in the comic that was kind of running alongside what in real life, and so you kind of had the two story juxtapose each other and kind of pairing, oddly, weirdly, kind of reflecting each other in real life and in the comics of the Black Freighter. So I really love how Alan Moore did that. But yeah, so for the movie, what they did is they cut the Black Freighter into its own, 2-hour movie or whatever. A few years ago, they made a TV show based on the story. It's kind of like a sequel to the comic book, which is also really good. If you have not seen the TV show, it's actually very, very good. I mean, this is from a comic book fan who realized that what they were doing was not like kind of plagiarizing Alan Moore, but what they were doing was kind of adding more to the story and world building of the Watchmen. You can tell that they were inspired by the comic, and so this is a brand new story that took place maybe 20 years later after the comic, and it totally actually really makes sense. And if you're an Alan Moore fan, you would really, really love the TV show. I mean, I did, and but like I said, some people dislike it. And they have characters in here that you've never heard of, except for Dr. Manhattan. He's the only person that survives the comic, and it kind of makes sense because he is at this point a god, and so he would never age and so forth. Oh, well, actually, I take it back. Silk Spectra does make it into the TV show, but she's much older, and they mention Nite Owl, but we never saw him, so I'm kind of curious about, because I think in the TV show, spoiler alert, in the TV show, it's mentioned that he's actually in prison for doing vigilante stuff. But anyway, I really love the TV show. If you haven't checked it out, I think you should. And nothing against the Zack Snyder film, but that film is good, but it's just basically a panel per panel recreation of Alan Moore's story onto the big screen, except that they changed the ending that kind of irked me. Alright, so let's get to the action figures. So I did not know this, but originally these action figures came in a box, like a cardboard box like this, that protected the interior. And I never knew that because I bought Nite Owl, which is the first figure in my collection. I bought it on clearance, and so I never got that protective cover. So as you can see, you can get a card of a Nite Owl, and then you get the Nite Owl that's based on the comic book, not the movie or TV show. So this is the Nite Owl from the comic book. He comes with his gun, and I guess these kind of moon stuff, I guess batarang or whatever. He also comes with a stand. They all come with stands. But of all the figures, he probably has the most accessories, at least in my collection. I am missing Dr. Manhattan, the comedian, and Rorschach, but they're too expensive, and I refuse to pay more than $30 for these. So, and like I said, I got these on clearance for about $15 each. So that's kind of like my price point. So yeah, Nite Owl. He's actually a very posable figure, except that his cape here kind of prevents a lot of movements. His leg obviously is free from all that, but his arms and stuff is restricted. As far as his head, it's also restricted by this little hard plastic hood, which kind of prevents him from turning too much or looking up or down. Actually, his head is pretty stationary, no thanks to this this hood thing. I guess you can turn, yeah, you can force it actually, but it's not easy with this hood. Alright, so that is Nite Owl. He is actually my favorite figure in this line, simply because he's the first one that I've owned, and I kind of really dig the design and everything. Alright, next we have Silk Spectra. She comes with a card and a figure and a stand. So yeah, she has, of all of them, she has probably the most articulation, just because of she can move all over the place with the legs and stuff. Her skirt does kind of prevent a lot of stuff, and her hair, which is hard plastic, kind of prevents you turning her head too much. The first thing about Silk Spectra is you notice this clear plastic blouse and skirt. It is it's plastic, and you can kind of see through it. And the problem is, I don't know if you can see this right here, is it feels like it's gonna, I don't like how it pops up like that, and I feel it's gonna get damaged over the years. I might consider gluing this down so I can put her blouse down just a little bit. I do like the see-through effect. I think that's very eye-catching. The whole thing is one piece. It's held by glue on the top here. So if you turn her body, her whole skirt turns with it. So that's something I don't really like. I feel I can damage her clothing over time. Like I said, I do love the translucent see-through of Silk Spectra. Her arm does not have that same material, so what they did is they kind of painted skin tone with this yellow, so it kind of gives off this fake see-through. Overall, I think the sculpting is very good. It's very faithfully done in the Dave Gibbons style. I mean, at least they tried to copy her look from the comic book. Again, this is based on the comic book, not the movies or anything like that. So I'm actually there are a set of figures based on the movies, which I refuse to buy. And also, speaking of action figures, they did make action figures based on the Doomsday Clock, which is the what DC tried to do, make a sequel of Watchmen, which, by the way, sucked. I refuse to buy it, or I've read some of it. It's terrible. There was another. There were a series of prequel called Before Watchmen that they had various creators work on, and those were also terrible. I think DC just wants to cash in. It's just obvious what DC was doing. None of them involve Alan Moore or Dave Gibbons, and of course either one of them probably will ever go back to work for DC based on the contract that kind of swindled them out of their creation. I think DC actually should just make it up and give back the characters back, or at least the story back to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. But you know, DC, they they love money, so I don't think they're gonna ever let go. I think when the movie came out, DC had mentioned that they sold so many Watchmen books that they clearly see this as more of a a financial thing rather than a form of art or anything. Okay, so last we have Ozymandias. Like I said, I've always wanted this figure ever since I saw him in the comic book, and here he is. So once again, it comes with a stand and an extra head and a trading card. And yeah, so he probably has the alternate head, obviously without the mask. The one with the mask I actually prefer, since in the comic it is the one with the mask that's the action figure. As for the head, it's basically the same head but minus the mask. So he is in purple and gold. Legs are very articulated, so you got a bunch of different options. Arms is hindered by this kind of plastic shirt, so you can't really go too far. Same here, and then he has a hard cape. Obviously the head is free to move however you want because his hair is not hindering it, so you can look up and down and left to right and all that good stuff. Yeah, he's probably the most posable of all the figures, except for his arms. And like I said, ever since I saw this portrayed in the comic, I've always wanted one. And in fact, actually, you should probably get 2 more so you can play around, just to reenact that scene. But anyway, yeah. So I'm glad I only paid $15 for this. I think that's a really good price. If you're in the market as well, Yeah, I mean, try to find it on the cheap, but if you can't hold out, I believe his figure is about $40 on the aftermarket. I think eventually I will have to track down Dr. Manhattan and Rorschach. Maybe even the comedian, although the comedian I can probably live without owning because he's probably my least favorite character of all the Watchmen. Well, I mean, if you follow the story, he basically dies right away, and then most of his story is told in flashback and stuff like that. So, okay, so final thoughts. I really love these figures. I wish I own a Rorschach or Dr. Manhattan, but obviously, based on my criteria for price point, I'm probably never going to own them. But if I find them for $25 or less, definitely I'm going to be picking them up. Unfortunately, I think they're all kind of expensive, so I might never own the rest. But you know, I love these figures. I think they, like I said, they're based on Dave Gibbons' design and art style, so that kind of gives it a little, kind of, I don't know, a little, you know, props in my opinion. Nothing against the movie version of these action figures, but I rather have these rather than the you know, the movie version, which is based on the character, you know, the actors and stuff, which I don't think really represents my Watchmen. So yeah, if you can find them for if you can find these for $15, you should definitely think about picking it up. Now, in the time that I talked about it, I kind of held down her blouse with these invisible rubber bands that came with the action figures, so I kind of held it down. I put in a little glue in there, so hopefully the blouse will stay down. Otherwise, it kind of pops up, and I really kind of don't like that. But I think this plastic thing is actually really kind of very neat. I mean, as far as the kind of fake see-through, you know, version. I kind of wish they went all out and have her arms with this plastic too. But you know, instead they just sculpted this regular arm, and so that doesn't look too good. But as far as the main dress and blouse and skirt, it looks really good as far as the kind of see-through element of it is. Yeah, anyway, thanks for watching.